Mayor and City Council, I'd like to invite Alex Vidali to come forward and lead us in the pledge. We'd all stand, please. Face the flag, put your hand over your heart. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, liberty and justice for all. I'd like to call upon Councilmember Becky Wynn for a special presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Chief Williams? Oh, if you forgot, I'll forget about it too.
I forgot about it.
There was one of these insignificant college games a couple of weeks ago.
Hardly so.
That Longhorns and that other team played. And so I'm paying off my bet tonight.
Roll Tide.
If I could have Mayor and Council come down for a special presentation to the chief.
That looks good on you. You look good in it.
I'm getting hot. I have a special presentation for you, Chief Williams. I sent this down to New Orleans to my little Gregory lady. And she said that if you don't wear this to every Bama game, they will never win another game.
Oh, God.
So I now crown you the Bama keeper of the necklace.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Okay.
Do I have to turn? Come on, guys. I want everybody in there. Come on. Everybody in there.
I think I did.
Very good. Congratulations.
Oh, thank you.
Glad you won the bet, but I'm not sure you really won. Thank you very much.
I have to wear it. It has to be properly displayed throughout the council meeting.
Do we have a motion to approve the consent agenda? Motion by Councilman Eigelhart. Is there a second? Second by Councilmember Nancy Diamond. Does anyone in the audience have any questions or comments regarding the consent agenda? All in favor of the consent agenda, raise their hands. Passes unanimously. This time I'll call upon Councilman Jerry Orleans, liaison to the Administration and Finance Department.
First item on the agenda tonight is a presentation of the fiscal year 2009 comprehensive annual financial report. And if everybody can come up and present it for us.
I'm pleased to present to y'all tonight the FY 2009 Comprehensive Annual Financial Report with an unqualified opinion from our auditors Malden and Jenkins. You'll find the unqualified opinion on pages 1 and 3, and this is the proud document right here. On page 24 are the financial numbers for the general fund, and the fund ended the year with an operational profit of $4.4 million. This was the result of revenues coming in $126,000 greater than was projected in the budget, and also the department spending $1.9 million less than was budgeted. The fund balance was budgeted to be reduced by $8.3 million and was reduced by only $5.8 million as a result of these funds being used for pay-as-you-go capital. That's the best way I know to buy capital. You're not in debt for it. As of June 30, 2009, there is $16.6 million in the reserved and designated fund balance and $19.3 million in the unreserved. The general fund is in a very healthy financial position. On page 27, you will see the financial information for the city's proprietary funds. The water and sewer fund ended the year with a profit of $839,000. The sanitation fund ended the year with a profit of $1.5 million. The participant recreation fund ended the year with a profit of $52,000. The city continues to be financially healthy. On pages 130 and 131 is a list of findings and question costs found with the audit this year. The first related to the booking of retainage on contracts that got booked twice. This has been corrected, and a better process that includes more checks and balances has been put in place to track the retainages. The second finding was due to budget amendments on the federal grants fund. As amendments were being approved for the expenditures of the revenues from the grants were not being amended, causing the budget for the federal grants fund to become out of balance by the end of the year. This process has also been improved, and in the future, as an amendment comes to Mayor and Council on grants, the amendment will also reflect the revenues that need to be amended at the same time. You've also received a document that's entitled the 2000 Annual Audit Agenda. This is prepared by our auditors and goes into more detail on the numbers that I have presented to you summarized. It also includes starting on page 11, management points that they have suggested to staff. You will find with those points responses by staff on how we are going to handle each of those key areas. The financial success of the fiscal year 2009 is due to the Mayor and Council, K-Love, the department heads, the accounting and budget staffs. Thank you to each of you for your part in making this past year another good financial year for the City of Roswell. Absolutely, I apologize. Well, Adam and James, okay, please stand up. They represent Malden and Jenkins. James was the auditor that was on the field work while we were here, and Adam has to approve everything James does. Okay, thank you.
Thank you for your
Question? Question?
Thank you.
Okay.
We have Councilmember Price has a question.
I was just curious as to when these two documents were completed.
The field work was finished at what time? Y'all remember the date? They used to put the field work date on the opinion letter, but they don't do that anymore.
Field work, I would say,
Okay, early.
And then we can't date our reports now until it goes all the way through our review process, and that was December 21st. When our reports are finalized.
And then they go to the printer to be printed.
Now, I'd love to have some questions, but since I've only just seen it 5 minutes ago, it's hard to formulate any.
Okay. Well, we'll be glad to talk with you if you have any questions.
Thank you very much.
Okay.
Excuse me. Next item on the agenda is awarding of the banking service contract to Bank of North Georgia, as recommended by Committee, Administration Finance Committee. Recommend placing the award of the contract to Bank of North Georgia. I move for approval, and Julia Luke is here to answer any questions on this topic as well.
Next item.
I just did it. I moved for approval and said Julia Luke is here to answer any questions as
Do
well.
we have a second? All in favor of the motion? Any questions or comments from the audience? Yes, come forward, please.
My name is Sarah Sosnowski. I'm with BB&T Bank, and we worked really hard on the presentation for the RFP proposal and answered questions throughout the past 3 months that we've been going through this. And tonight I brought with me a few of my cohorts within BB&T that either live here or work in the city of Roswell. And we just would like to know, what we can do to help answer some questions about BB&T that might have gotten missed at the last meeting. I actually was able to review the notes and saw that, Bank of North Georgia came and they were able to talk and answer some questions. So I would like to have the opportunity to do that.
You have that opportunity, but I would begin by, do you have any questions or comments to council?
Well, I would like to be able to explain the recovery program that BB&T has set up as far as disasters, how we would handle that. That would seem to be
You have that opportunity right now.
All right. I would like to bring forward Joan Hill, who is the manager of that in the Atlanta area, and she can take you into detail with that so you can ask her more detailed questions. I work as the relationship banker. I will be working directly with Julia and Kay and her team. Excuse me. Ms. Hill.
Thanks, Sarah. I'm Joan Hill. I'm the district sales manager in Payment Solutions. And I had heard through the recording of the last meeting that there were some questions perhaps about disaster recovery. I can talk in general about what we can provide for you as far as disaster recovery is concerned. So I guess there were some questions about whether or not, if your systems went down, if there were some problems with your systems, what could BB&T do to help with those, with any kind of systems that would go down? And we talked the last time we presented something to the Finance Committee, and that was that we would work during the implementation process to put together a disaster recovery program for the City of Roswell. That's really part of our implementation process for many of our clients who are looking for disaster recovery programs if they have wire transfers that must go out for various payments, for their direct deposit, and for various other files that are important for them to get out in order to do business. And so anyway, we have a lot of automated systems that we would put in place. We could certainly do something here at the local level, but we would also want to put some automated systems in place based on the type of technology we could offer. So anyway, I didn't know if anybody had any detailed questions about that or any other questions about disaster recovery that we could address for you tonight.
Does the council have any questions about disaster recovery? Apparently not. Any other
Yes, there was
points you'd
another,
like to raise?
there was another point that was raised that you were very interested in going with a local bank. And BB&T is headquartered in Winston-Salem, North Carolina. We are a holding company, and each state operates independently. So the decisions that would be made related to the city of Roswell would be made here in Atlanta. We have a full in-depth credit department here. We have the treasury management team, which Joan manages. And then we also have numerous branches. There's approximately 90 I think it's 92 to 98 branches in the metro Atlanta area, with 2 of those being within the city limits of Roswell. And I just want to make sure that you're aware of how closely related we are to the city. And I brought with me tonight Stephen Moxley, who would like to take a few moments just to enlighten you a little bit more about what BB&T does here in the Atlanta area.
Please come forward, Steve.
Yes, sir.
Thank you very much for your attention, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor, council members. I just had a few comments I'd like to make in regard to BB&T. I am Stephen Moxley. I am the North Fulton area executive. My office is in Roswell. It's the old Main Street bank. And appreciate the opportunity to be here tonight. I just had about 30 seconds of points in regard to BB&T's safety and soundness. And I think in today's economic environment, that's a very important consideration. In the last 2 years, 2008, 2009, BB&T is one of 3 banks in the country who made money during that time period. The other 2 banks were M&T Bank in Buffalo, New York, and U.S. Bank. In August of 2008, BB&T purchased Colonial Bank, and that was through an FDIC-assisted purchase. That was a $25 billion purchase, and obviously the FDIC felt that we were economically viable and could move forward with that purchase. As Sarah mentioned, we have a community banking model. I'm right down the street, and we're your neighbors. So we obviously love to do business with you. Our capital levels remain strong. BB&T's risk-based and tangible capital ratios remain well above regulatory standards for well-capitalized banks. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.
And I was aware that you're wanting to vote, but I just wanted to make sure that you knew exactly how important the city of Roswell is to BB&T. As I said, I've brought numerous friends here with me from the bank, and we just wanted to show you how, like I said, how important the city's business is.
And we appreciate your coming.
Thank you. Thank you for your time.
Thank you for coming. Thank all of you for coming. Anyone else wish to comment? Yes, come forward, please.
Hi, my name is Caroline Cronin, and I'm just a citizen of Roswell. But I did have a couple questions for you all.
Sure.
First of all...
for the record, if you'd give us your address.
310 Knollwoods Terrace.
Right.
Okay. A couple questions that I wanted to ask. Based on my review of the previous minutes, I've gotten the impression that it was not actually the recommendation of the Finance Committee to go with Bank of North Georgia, but was instead the recommendation of the Finance Committee to go with BB&T. And I'm kind of curious why this has been worded to go with someone who's, at least in my understanding, not the recommendation. And maybe you can elaborate.
I will explain to you my support for the Bank of North Georgia. And things were pretty close. Both BB&T and Bank of North Georgia seemed to be very well qualified banks, and had it came down to a finer point of we saw the management of the North Georgia Bank being local management, and the management of Wachovia, not of BB&T, not Wachovia. I apologize. I've been dealing with them yesterday. The management of BB&T being out of North Carolina. And it was really and we recognized they had a lot of local presence here and did a lot in the community. But it was more of a personal relationship with the management being local versus the management being out of state.
Okay.
I may or may not be wrong. I'm just giving you my reasoning.
Okay. From a personal standpoint, as a citizen, I'm assuming I'm allowed to.
You can. You have the floor, and you can give your personal opinion.
I was also a CFO of a public company, and I'm currently the VP of Finance for another company. So I would encourage you all to consider what works best for the city functionally. Whatever your Finance Committee has recommended, I'm sure that they have done due diligence to look at how it really operates. So I would encourage you to listen to your Finance Committee. I know when I had to make these same decisions, I did. I have one other question, and that is the financial stability of Bank of North Georgia and Synovus. I've read many articles recently kind of questioning their financial stability. I'm curious if you all have really read up on that and how you've gotten over that concern.
Well, in the questions that we had and the recommendations we had at the committee meeting, both banks seem to be financially sound. And I'm not an expert on this. I'm just telling you what I heard at that meeting.
Okay. And again, I would encourage you to kind of maybe read up on that, because it is, if you read some of the financial statements, that's not exactly what you'll find. So just my opinion as a Roswell citizen.
And we appreciate
your
opinion. Thank you for coming tonight. Okay. Does anyone else wish to be heard? Councilman Iger, let me just make sure I've got everybody out there, and then I'll return to the council. Anyone else wish to be heard? All right, this time we'll hear from the council. Councilmember Eichelhardt.
The actual answer to that question was that there's not a council committee that made that recommendation, but there was a staff process that went through the entire bid process that we've set up. We follow when we have any kind of service like this that it goes through. It was a several-month process, and the staff that did that process did make a recommendation for BB&T. We went through several months here at the council level, and actually at committee's level, to actually postpone that. But then we came back here. It was my understanding we had a presentation from staff tonight to actually lay out all the things that were involved, and we did not get that tonight. So I would actually ask if we could actually get that information that staff was prepared to present.
And if staff has something, if they would present your position, Councilmember Eichelhardt would like to have that repeated.
RFQ 09-41J for banking services was issued and 6 responses were received. 3 banks were selected to present oral presentations to the evaluation committee. The 3 banks were Wachovia, Bank of North Georgia, and BB&T. These were then narrowed to 2 banks, Bank of North Georgia and BB&T. The evaluation committee then further evaluated these 2 banks on financial stability, technology, portfolio management, and disaster recovery plans. The evaluation committee recommended BB&T. On January 5, 2010, the Administration of Finance and Recreation and Parks Committee recommended placing the award of the contract to Bank of North Georgia on the January 20th Mayor and Council agenda. The projected fees for banking services with the Bank of North Georgia are $146,251 and are funded in the FY 2010 amended budget.
Ken, did you have some other questions?
I think some of the aspects that were considered by that committee or by the bid process group was the financial stability and some of the services that could be provided at this time. And they did feel that BB&T was in a better position to do that. So, that's where we are. But clearly I'm not going to win that one. I have nothing against Bank of North Georgia. I agree with the mayor that both banks are very qualified and good banks. And Bank of North Georgia unquestionably has a long service history in Roswell and does a great job here. But it does trouble me that we had a process that we've set in place that our staff took great diligence in putting some banks through, including community involvement, and decided, or made a recommendation anyway, that we go one way. And just in December, we said that the council was micromanaging by trying to put a freeze on hiring. And yet, when it comes to something that was specific from staff, we've now said, okay, fine, we'll just throw that out, and the time that went into that. So it troubles me that we're in that position, but that's where we are.
Further discussion or comment before we take a vote? We have a motion and a second to approve the award for banking services to Bank of North Georgia. All in favor of that motion, raise their hands. That's Councilman Orleans, Councilman Price, Councilman Wynn, Councilman DiPolito, and Councilman Diamond. All opposed?
I would like to say this is not a vote against Bank of North Georgia, but it is a vote against the process that we are not following.
Well, and Councilman Eigelhart opposed. The motion passes 5-1.
Thank you. Next item on the agenda is approval of a resolution to accept a 2010 Energy Efficiency and Conservation Block Grant, formally awarded from the U.S. Department of Energy, and approval of a budget amendment 4600S1-01-20-10, setting up the budget for this grant project in the amount of $825,700. Move for approval of the resolution, and Mr. Fisher is here to answer any questions from you. We need the resolution read.
Do we need to read the resolution? It's not necessary to read the resolution. Mr. Fisher, if you could explain what we'll be using if we receive this grant. First of all, is this a matching grant or is this a...
No, sir. It's a stimulus grant for the total amount of $825,700, so there's no match to this one.
And this would be an application for that grant?
This is to accept the award.
Oh, to accept the grant. So
yes,
if
sir.
we accept it, we'll receive that money. And what is the intended use for this $825,000?
The main portion, over $700,000, will be for the lighting upgrades to 5 of the facilities here within the city, with the goal ultimately of this grant of reducing the energy consumption for our lighting of 30% for the city. Excuse me. There's also a training portion of this grant for $2,500, but it is to be able to use the software that we'll be using to track this grant. This grant will have to have a tracking period of 2 years, 3 years. So we will be tracking our energy consumption throughout. And then there's also a $50,000 portion of this grant to be used for outdoor lighting. It's a pilot project, so we're going to be looking at the qualifications and whether or not we can actually get this done or not, but possibly trying to find some outdoor lighting, maybe some LED lighting that would help us in our energy consumption for outdoors. So that is a pilot project that they have allowed us to review to see whether or not it's something that can be done, and if it can, we would certainly love to move forward with that also. But that's all included in this one grant.
Do we have a motion? Do we have a motion and a second? No, second. We have a motion by Councilman Orleans to accept this grant. Do we have a second? Second. Second by Councilman Eigelhart. Does anyone in the audience have any questions or comments? Any further discussion by council? All in favor of the motion, raise their hands. Passes unanimously. This time I'll call upon our Recreation and Parks Liaison, Councilman Kent Eichelhardt.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Our next item is approval of Budget Amendment 9620-01-20-10 in the amount of $800,000 to fund several projects for the Recreation and Parks. And ask Mr. Glover to come up and go through those, please.
Thank you, Mr. Eichelhardt. Before you is $800,000 for projects that we previously talked about at a committee meeting. The money would be coming from impact fee. The impact fee can only be spent for new construction projects in parks. $500,000 would be designated from the impact fee account, which would include a spray ground, a water feature at East Roswell Park, restroom facilities at Don White, Riverside Park, picnic pavilions and shelters for the spray ground at Riverside Park, and some trail extension at East Roswell Park from Ease Road to Steeplechase or the Fouts Road. Those are the projects under the impact fee account. Also, we would like to request $300,000 from the Recreation Participation Fund. We've discovered that our pool filtration system, being 36 years old, is in dire need of repair, or it has to be completely scrapped and a new system placed. Approximately $125,000 costing that. We've been using a used school bus from Fulton County Board of Education, 1988 model, which is now not reliable to even drive inside of town. We'd like to go ahead and purchase a bus at $75,000. And we'd like to do some athletic field lighting out at Big Creek, Northwood Elementary School, approximately $100,000 cost on that.
Does the council have any questions for Mr. Glover? Councilman Orleans.
Mr. Glover, have you looked into the similar source that we got the buses from the last time?
Fulton County Board of Education is reusing all their buses. They don't have anything in surplus. We've talked to Board of Education members, people at the bus yard. They don't anticipate anything in the next few years. And if they do have something surplus, it's going to be just about the same shape of what we're trying to replace.
Do we have a motion?
Move to approve the budget amendment.
Motion by Councilman Eichelhardt for approval. Do we have a second? Second by Councilman Diamond. Is there anyone in the audience that has any questions or comments? Any further discussion by council? All in favor of the motion, raise their hands. Passes unanimously. This time I'll call upon our city attorney for his report.
Thank you, Mayor. I have 3 items under my agenda. The first is the approval of a resolution to limit the number of terms for the office of mayor, and this would be limiting the terms to 3 terms or a period of 12 years, whichever is shorter. This resolution would have to be sent to the General Assembly for a change to our charter if approved.
And when would that go into effect?
It would go into effect after this term of yours for office. So 4 years, basically.
Does the council have any questions? Councilman Orleans.
Mr. Davidson, two questions. I don't know, I'm not saying I'm in favor of this, but I just want to clarify some of the points in the resolution. Legal has asked if they could check into if the current term would or could be used rather than starting after this term.
Yes.
So I'm assuming you have an answer to that.
Yes, we checked into it, and basically when you create a law, you can't go backwards. This term of office is basically a substantive right as of now, so for the mayor to serve this term. So you would be limiting his terms in office by making it effective now, which you can't do. You can only do that for remedial type measures.
But he wants it.
Do I?
But he wants it.
Well, he can do whatever he wants as far as him running. But yeah, we looked at it, and basically it would need to take effect after this term of office.
And in my other question, to clarify, again in committee you talked about 3 terms, 3 consecutive terms, and that someone actually could be out of office and then come back and run again. So I'm curious as to why you put the maximum 12 years, because if you read it that way, then what we discussed would not be able to happen. That it's 12 years would not necessarily be 3 contiguous terms. I mean, if somebody skipped one or came back later for 2 terms, it wouldn't fit. So I guess I thought that the 12 years should not be in there. Any comments on that?
Well, we can take it out. It was meant to be a consecutive 12 years. It wasn't meant to be
Is that
12
clear?
years. We can put...
What does it say right now?
It says a maximum of, it says the mayor may, the number of terms that a mayor may be consecutively elected in the city of Roswell be limited to 3 or a maximum of 12 years. So we could put 12 consecutive years, or we could take it out.
Yeah, I don't think the maximum of 12 years should be on it if we're doing it the way we originally talked about it. And again, I'm not saying I'm in favor of this at all, but I'm just trying to clarify.
If you said the 12 consecutive years, it would be clear. And it's always good to be clear. Otherwise, lawyers will twist it around. All right. We have a resolution. Do we have a motion?
I had
Question. Councilman Eichelhardt.
a similar question, because with the word "or" in there, does it not make it then, it's a period of 12 years separate from the 3 terms? So I would kind of agree with Mr. Orleans that we probably should just take it out, because it doesn't do anything different than what the 3 terms already does. Does that add anything better?
Well, basically it's in there as an or, whichever is shorter. So 3 terms, if the mayor dies.
And
none of us want it. None of us have ever even wished that.
Or if he decides to leave office, somebody's elected this year to replace him, or next year to replace him, that would be 1 term. So they would be finishing out a term. That would be 1 term, and then it would be 2 more terms after that they would be able to serve. So it's 12 years would be the maximum, or 3 consecutive terms. So it could be shorter than 12 years.
The point is you say it twice, we start confusing us. We're simple-minded.
We can easily take it out. That's not an issue.
Councilmember Wynn.
That was my question, because if we do have an unexpired term, let's say 2 years, then that 3 consecutive terms includes those 2 years. Am I correct?
That's correct.
And so what you're trying to say is that it's either 3 consecutive terms, which includes an unexpired term, if there's appropriate, or 3 full terms, which adds up to 12 years, whichever is the least.
Correct. Or
Okay.
shorter.
Or shorter. So I think that's what we need to have, those 3 consecutive terms in there, because if we have an unexpired term.
We all agree with you. Just say 3 consecutive terms and don't
And forget about the 12 years, and I agree with that.
That confuses us.
Yeah, I just want to make
It's
sure.
over our head.
Make it very simple. This is a KISS thing, okay? Make it very simple.
I appreciate that. Other questions or comments before we entertain a motion? Councilman Orland.
Yeah, just again, Mr. Davidson, just to clarify what you said there, that if this was already in place and Jer started this term, but somebody else came in the middle of the term because he fell off his bicycle or something,
ran away to the circus,
then would this term count as the first term for the new person, even though they were not in for a whole term?
It would count as a term, yes. Correct.
Do we have a motion?
I will move to approve the resolution with the change that we strike "or" a period of 12 years, whichever is shorter.
Motion by Eichelhardt to approve the resolution without the 12 years. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second by Councilmember Wynn. Anyone in the audience have any questions or comments? Further discussion by council. Councilmember Price.
This is a difficult one, because we obviously have the will of the people to consider, and elections serve that purpose for people to exercise their constitutional right to elect their leaders. The only way I could look at this objectively was to see that what was being done in other offices and other locations. And obviously, our U.S. president is limited to 2 terms. Our governor's limited to 2 terms as our most. But when it comes to U.S. senators, U.S. House representatives, other offices, generally there are no term limits. When it comes down to municipalities and mayors, in many places they can't find people to serve as mayor. We haven't had that problem here. It seems that a number of people do want to be mayor. And we've grown to the size, and maybe 100,000 is the threshold that puts us into a category where we would not have a problem getting qualified people to serve as mayor. In looking at other municipalities, apparently only 9% of municipalities in the country term limit their mayors. Granted, many of those are small towns. In the larger cities, in the top 10 cities, only Chicago does not term limit its mayors, which I'm not sure we want to model ourselves after Chicago. So that's just the facts I wanted to throw out just for consideration, and I'm still struggling with this one.
We have a motion and a second. Further discussion. Councilman Orleans.
Kind of thinking along the lines that Betty brought up is, you get elected by the public, and the public should be able to take you out of office. Like parents used to say, I brought you into life and I can take you out, But, and I think on the city level that the elected officials are close enough to the people that they get involved and can make the decision and vote somebody out of office. And yes, I agree that it's always tough to go against an incumbent. So then the question is that why we're passing this, just to make it easier for somebody to run, or is there a real reason to put the limitation in? And there have been times when it's been difficult to find good candidates to run for office. Not that we would have that problem here in Roswell. So I am not necessarily in favor of this resolution.
This motion was brought forward at my request. I had proposed this originally 12 years ago. It was a campaign promise of mine to limit the term to 2 years. I still believe as an institution it's appropriate to limit the term of office as mayor. I believe it's very easy in the mayor's office. If you want to stay in the office, don't take a position. I think that the mayor needs to take a position sometimes, even at political risk. And I think a term limit says get something done and get it done while you're in office and move on. Now, some folks said I should have moved on already. 49% of the voters did. And they might have been right. But again, I believe that Roswell's gotten to a size in which I can tell you I had plenty of folks running against me that were well-funded and well-run campaigns, and we didn't have trouble finding somebody to run for mayor. And I believe I was the best qualified, but I think the other two were fairly well qualified. And so I think finding a qualified person is not a problem, but I really think it comes down to the mayor needs to be out there taking some bold stands and taking some risk and taking a position. So I support term limits on mayor. People ask me why didn't I step down after 2 terms. I said I'm still taking lots of risks. I'm still taking lots of risks and taking positions that are sometimes not popular. But I think in general we've gotten to the size of the city that we are in the near future. I think the next mayor needs to be a full-time mayor. And I think we need a mayor who's willing to, who is not as concerned as much about maintaining his position in his office as getting things done. And I think term limits will encourage that in the mayor's office. Did I call for a public hearing already? Well, I see somebody has their hand up and nobody had their hand up before. So, yes, sir, you may come forward and comment. We'll open it back up.
I'm Jack White, and I own a business at 10460 Alpharetta Street. And in listening to this, I disagree with your resolution. If you're going to be voted out of office if you're not doing what you're supposed to do anyway on a local level. But if you do put it in, I think you should consider one change and make it 3 full terms, because if somebody does have to come in halfway through, that person ends up being penalized, or the city ends up being penalized by not having a qualified person for 3 full terms. So thank you for your time.
Thank you, sir. Further discussion by council. We have a motion and a second. All in favor of the motion raise their hands. That's Councilmember Eichelhart, Wynn, DePolito, and Diamond in favor. All opposed? Councilmember Price, were you in favor? I apologize.
Well, actually, you snuck in there rather quickly. I actually was considering an amendment.
We will consider an amendment and see if we get a second. I don't want to. I apologize.
And I think to be kind of in line with what is done in other offices, that if you hold a partial term for less than half of that term, you are eligible for 3 more terms. I'm not sure how to word that, but along the lines.
You'd have to put some years back in there. No more than 14 years.
Oh, I thought we took that out. We didn't take that out.
But now you've sort of changed you've sort of made some changes to it. So you might say not to exceed 14 years, period. 3 terms or 14 years, whichever.
All right, may I make an amendment then to...
Before let's get Mr. Davidson's agreement on drafting this thing. What if you said 14 years or 3 terms, whichever is more?
Right.
Yeah. But then you'd have to make sure you had a cutoff period. It gets a little tricky in drafting it. Councilman Eichelhart.
What if we do follow the recommendation that was just given, that it's 3 full terms?
No more than 3 full terms. Partial terms don't count. So that's, if it's 3 years, you could serve. If I resign tomorrow, then he might serve. The next mayor might serve 3 years and 3 terms in 3 years plus. So, Mrs. Price, would that?
So that means we have struck or a period of 12 years.
Well, we're considering an amendment. I know we've got to craft an amendment here and see if the council will accept it. So you need to come up with language for your amendment.
So, I guess the question is, Mr. Davidson is 3 full terms. You have to figure out where to put that in there.
3 full terms would work. I mean, basically, it could just read, the mayor and city council of the city of Roswell do hereby resolve and call upon the General Assembly of the state of Georgia to enact an amendment to the charter of the city of Roswell, Georgia, limiting the number of consecutive terms that a person may hold the office of mayor of the city of Roswell to 3 full terms. Period.
3 full consecutive.
Mrs. Price, do you wish to make move to make that amendment?
So moved.
We have a motion to amend. Is there a second?
If you'd like, we could not have to go that far and not accept that.
Do you accept that change? Mr. Eichelhart accepts that change. Does Mrs. Diamond accept that amendment? So we have revised the motion. Does everybody understand the motion? 3 full terms. Further discussion on the motion to approve 3 full terms. All in favor of that motion? Councilmember Price, Eichelhart, Wynn, DePolito, and Diamond. All opposed. Councilman Orleans passes 5-1.
The next item I have is approval of an ordinance to amend Chapter 2, Article 2.6 of the Code of Ordinances regarding the terms of office for boards and commissions. This ordinance will limit the terms of any board and commission member to 3 consecutive terms. And I would need to...
Is that 3 full consecutive terms?
Actually, I addressed it in this ordinance. I didn't address it in the resolution, but basically it says if the members are currently serving an unexpired term, said term shall not be considered an initial term for the purpose of the term limits. If they're a holdover member, which we have several holdover members on the boards, they would either be reappointed with that being an initial term, or they would relinquish their seat within 6 months. So,
If you would read the resolution, the ordinance.
Thank you.
Is this going to take 2 readings?
Yes.
All right, this will be the first reading of the ordinance, if you read the ordinance.
This is an ordinance to amend Chapter 2.
Can we put a copy up on the screen? Go read the ordinance, please.
Actually, it doesn't say full terms in here, so I can change it to full terms. If
Well,
y'all want me to
we'll
change
just read it as it's written, and we can accept a motion with that change.
Okay, this is an ordinance to amend Chapter 2 Administration, Article 2.6, Boards and Commissions of the Code of Ordinances of the City of Roswell. Now, therefore, to accomplish the foregoing, the Mayor and Council, pursuant to their authority, adopt the following ordinance. Chapter 2 Administration, Article 2.6, Boards and Commissions, Section 2.6.3, Terms of Office of the Code of Ordinances of the City of Roswell, is hereby amended by deleting said section in its entirety and adding a new section 2.6.3 to read as follows. Boards and commission members shall serve 4-year terms, except HPC members, whose terms shall be for 3 years. A member of any board or commission shall not serve more than 3 consecutive terms on any board or commission after adoption of this ordinance, but may, at the election of mayor and council, be appointed to serve on another board or commission. If members are currently serving an unexpired term, said term shall not be considered an initial term for purposes of these term limits. A position on a board or commission currently being occupied by a holdover member shall either be filled by reappointment, with such reappointment being deemed an initial term for purposes of term limits, be filled by a newly appointed member, or be deemed vacant 6 months after adoption of this ordinance. A member whose term expires after adoption of this ordinance may serve until her successor has been duly appointed, or for a maximum period of 6 months, whichever is shorter. For any board or commission created subsequent to the adoption of this ordinance, 4-year terms shall be staggered with the initial appointments as follows: 2 members for a term of 4 years, 2 members for a period of 3 years, and 3 members for a term of 2 years. Chapter 2 Administration is further amended by deleting Section 2.6.6 residence requirements, and adding therefore a new Section 2.6.6 to read as follows. All members shall be residents of the city. However, if a serving member moves outside the city limits, such member may serve until his or her successor has been duly appointed, or for a maximum period of 6 months, whichever is shorter. They've approved this to be the first reading of the ordinance.
Would we need to say full terms if we wanted to make sure that they came only served a partial term, they'd have at least 3 terms?
Right.
Now, it was my understanding that the Rec Commission had 5-year terms. Would this change the Rec Commission from 5-year terms to 4-year terms?
No, sir, it wouldn't.
So this 4-year terms does not apply to the Rec Commission?
Right. The Rec Commission is set by state law, as is the HPC.
Now, but would this set term limits on the Rec Commission?
This section does, and we would have to go to another section in the code and set those term limits if that's the wish of council. And I can make that amendment on the second reading.
So we'd have to ask to include term limits on the Rec Commission in addition to this?
Yes.
All right. Councilman Orleans, you have a question.
I was just going to say, in Administrative Finance Committee, we discussed the term being 3 years, try to coincide with the HPC, and that's what I thought the wording was going to come forward from the committee, that everybody was in agreement that it would be, a term would be 3 years and not 4 years.
You mean in everything?
Yes.
Everything.
On any of the boards and commissions, except for the Rec Commission.
Well, that would be
I can make that change.
as read. We'll get a motion and see what the comments are, but
I'll make a motion.
You'd like to make a motion to
Yeah.
approve this and change it to 3-year terms?
Right, I'll make a motion with that change in it, and that also, of course, will change the staggering in page 2.
All right, so you would move to approve the resolution with changing 4-year terms and make everybody 3-year terms?
Yes. So
Now,
that's,
do you wish to expand this to the Rec Commission or not?
we can't. I mean, that's a separate law. The 5-year term.
You can change the actual number of terms that commission members can serve. You just can't change the number of years each term is.
Do you wish to place term limits, 3 terms on the rec commission? Or leave them?
Why don't we leave that to the second reading, because we didn't really discuss that in committee, so give us a
Your
chance
motion
to
is not
discuss
to
it.
include the rec commission
Correct.
at this time, but make it 3-year terms. We have a motion by Councilman Orleans. Do we have a second? Yes.
I have a question.
Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. There was discussion about the HPC. How is the HPC included in this or not?
They are included in this. The number of years they serve per term is 3 years by state law. It's set out in state law. They are included in this section, though, for term limits.
But the number of years is established by state law, and that
Correct.
is currently 3.
Correct.
Okay, thanks.
Councilmember Wynn.
Does the motion include putting in 3 full consecutive terms like we did on the mayor's ordinance?
Does it include that?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Other questions before we ask for a second? We have a motion. Do we have a second? Second by Councilmember DiPolito. Does anyone in the audience have any questions or comments regarding this motion for term limits on all of our boards with the exception of Rec Commission? Yes, sir. Come forward, please.
I'm Hayden Branch. I live at 260 High Branch Way in Inverness. I am on the Board of Zoning Appeals and was appointed 2 or 3 years ago. And when I was appointed, I was never told it was a term, I was filling a term or starting a new term or whatever. So I'm at least glad to know there are terms and it's not a life sentence. So, but for appointed positions, I guess I feel like it's probably a good thing to have some turnover on the boards just to get new perspectives. I think after 12 years, I would probably be a little bit burned out on that. But so generally, I guess I'm in favor of that. Did have one question for the mayor. It's slightly out of term, but I was wondering, since I've heard Roswell's government sometimes described as a weak mayor system because of the maybe the way you settle ties and you vote in case of a tie.
That's what it is.
But I was just wondering if there was any, and I missed some of the discussion earlier, so I apologize if I missed it, but was there any discussion of having term limits for city council and not just the mayor? Or is
No,
it just
sir, there was not, and I will tell you that my experience has been, in the 60 years that I have lived here, we've had a regular turnover of council members. But in the mayor's office, we've had long-serving mayors, and I think we had an excellent long-serving mayor preceding me. And I think I've done an excellent job. Not everyone believes that, but I'm looking at it as an institution, as the city has grown in size, and the responsibilities have on the mayor and the time that it's taken in this mayor's office. I think it's the nature of the job has changed over time, and I support term limits on the mayor's office, but I don't support term limits on the council's office, because if you look at this council, I think it's good on a board or a council to have some folks with years of experience and some folks that are fresh and have a good mix. And I think this council has an excellent mix of experience and fresh ideas.
Well, thank you. And I do support term limits on myself, so just for the record.
We have a motion and a second. Further discussion. All in favor of the motion, raise their hands. Passes unanimously.
Final item on my agenda is a recommendation for closure to discuss personnel.
Do we have a motion for closure? Motion by Councilman Orleans. Do we have a second? Second by Councilmember Price. All in favor of the motion, raise their hands. Passes unanimously. We have a work session in room 220. It's going to be an incredibly exciting work session. We're going to talk about budget and water. And that's in room 220 across the rotunda.